Billionaires and Their Toys, Part 1, Richard Branson Goes to Space. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff. JR is here as well. He's the producer, and this is Plain English lesson number 386 on Monday, August 2nd, 2021. This full lesson, including the transcript and translations into 9 languages, is available at plainenglish.com/386. Coming up today, when the British entrepreneur and celebrity Richard Branson founded Virgin Galactic in 2004, his vision of private space travel seemed far out of reach, but Branson himself took a ride in his own spacecraft. He went to the edge of space and declared Virgin Galactic open for business when he landed. For $250,000, a seat on an upcoming flight to space could be yours. In the second half of today's lesson, we'll talk about the English expression on the way. I bet most of you know what it means, but this is such an important and versatile expression that I wanted to highlight it for you. All that and a quote of the week on today's lesson. By the way, if 13,158 of you sign up for Plain English Plus by the end of the month, I'll make a reservation for a future Virgin Galactic spaceflight, and I'll tell you all about it. Just about a year ago, in lesson 273, we talked about the era of private spaceflight. SpaceX, the space company created by Tesla founder Elon Musk, had just launched an astronaut into space. At the time, it was the first private company to send someone into space. Before that flight, the only way astronauts got to space was on government-sponsored missions. The private space industry took 2 giant steps forward again this month when first Richard Branson and then 9 days later Jeff Bezos both flew on their respective company-owned rockets to the edge of space. They were each unique in their own way. Let's first look at Branson, the founder of a collection of companies under the label Virgin. He started with Virgin Records, a music store, and expanded into railways, radio stations, travel, and hotels. In 2004, Branson founded Virgin Galactic, a company to make private space travel a reality. He said he was inspired by the Apollo moon landing in 1969. At the time, it seemed impossibly futuristic, and it became Branson's lifelong aspiration. And now, the future appears to have arrived. After investing $1 billion and 17 years in the venture, Branson has finally realized his dream. The 70-year-old entrepreneur went to space on his own aircraft. Virgin Galactic had done test runs previously, but this was the first time that the company took multiple passengers into space. Branson himself was aboard. His ship, is comprised of two parts: a winged plane called Spaceship Two and a mothership called White Knight 2. They took off from a launching pad in the American state of New Mexico at 8:30 in the morning. The two parts rocketed 50,000 feet in the air, attached together. That's about twice as high as commercial airplanes fly. Then, after about 45 minutes, they decoupled or separated, and Spaceship Two's engine engaged, propelling the smaller part much farther into the sky than the one it had previously been attached to. The 6 people on board, Branson, 3 Virgin Galactic employees, and 2 pilots, then climbed 53.3 miles above the Earth. On the way, they accelerated at 3 times the speed of sound. Outside their window, the light of the Earth's atmosphere turned to the darkness of space. When they reached a suborbital level, the ship paused and held its position floating above Earth. The crew unfastened themselves from their seats and enjoyed a few minutes of weightlessness. They then buckled back in, and the wings curled up as the plane made its way down through the Earth's atmosphere and landed on a runway. Branson's flight was one of the last test flights before commercial service starts, as Virgin Galactic has already received permission from America's Federal Aviation Administration to take commercial passengers into space. The ship they'll use holds 2 pilots and 6 passengers. The company already has 600 reservations for private space flights, with prices ranging from $200,000 to $250,000. They believe that there's a market of about 2 million people per year who would pay that amount of money for a ride to space. The employees aboard Branson's flight were working on improvements to the cabin and finalizing passenger instructions and orientation materials. 3 more test flights are planned. Branson wasn't supposed to go to space on July 11th. He was scheduled to go on one of the last test flights before commercial service began. But when Jeff Bezos announced he was going to space on July 20th, the anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, well, then Branson changed his schedule to beat his rival Bezos into space. Out of the 3 billionaire space entrepreneurs, Branson, Bezos, and Musk, Sir Richard Branson was the first to ride his own ship to space. Once he landed, Branson announced he would be creating a sweepstakes, allowing a lucky person to win 2 tickets on one of the first commercial Virgin Galactic space flights happening next year. Of course, this was Richard Branson, so the whole thing was elaborately staged with a huge party, a live stream of the action, and a choreographed video introduction. The video showed Branson riding his bicycle along a closed highway in New Mexico and escorted by 2 SUVs, because that apparently is how you ride a bicycle if you're Richard Branson. Anyway, the video clearly showed him on his bike arriving at Spaceport America, where the spacecraft would take off. The strong implication was that Branson rode his bike to the spaceport, got on a spaceship, and went to space. That is not what happened. The passengers had to be there before dawn, and Branson didn't ride his bike to the launch. He arrived quite conventionally in a car. The bike ride was from a different day. Well, I saw a funny article describing this little fiasco. Most of the article is not safe for work, so I won't link to it. But the article pointed out how strange it is that in a video showing a 70-year-old man riding a bicycle to his spaceship and flying to space, the part about the bicycle was fake and the part about the space flight was real. Today's expression is on the way. It's such a common phrase, but I realized that this is one of those phrases that's essential in English, but is probably not translated directly into any other language. So if you try to translate this directly from your language, you probably won't get it right. We'll cover 2 ways to use on the way. The first is to say that something happens during your journey from one place to another. I usually read on the way to my office. That means I typically read during the journey from home to the office. Richard Branson had quite a day at the office, didn't he? He went to space. And on the way to space, the plane traveled at 3 times the speed of sound. That was what was happening during his journey from Earth to space. They were also live streaming the adventure on the way to space. You can watch the replay on YouTube. You can talk about an event that happened during the journey. On the way to the restaurant, I realized I forgot my wallet, so I had to turn around and go back home. I've mentioned before that I drove a moving truck from New York to Chicago. The moving truck broke down on the way. The moving truck had mechanical problems on the way during the journey. A second way to use on the way is to tell others that you are currently going from one place to another. If you have dinner reservations for 8:00 p.m. and your friends are there at the restaurant wondering where you are, you can answer, "I'm on the way." That means you're currently traveling from home to the restaurant. Where are you? The best answer to that question is, "I'm on the way." That means I'm moving. I'll be there soon. Now, there's one more way to use on the way, and that is to describe something that is permanently located on a route. I used to live on the way from downtown Chicago to O'Hare our biggest airport. I used to live on the Way. People commonly travel from downtown to the airport. There's a big highway, Interstate 94, that connects the two. And I lived right off the highway, right at the exit for Addison Street. My apartment was located between those two common destinations, so we say I lived on the way from downtown to the airport. I drove to Yellowstone National Park last summer. That was my primary destination. But I also went to Mount Rushmore, the mountain with the faces of American presidents carved into the side. It's a popular tourist attraction, and I'm glad I went. But let's be honest, I only went because it was on the way to Yellowstone. It was on the way to Yellowstone, meaning I had a route from Chicago to Yellowstone, and Mount Rushmore was on the way. It was along the same route. I could pull off easily and make that stop. A few weeks ago, I went to Wisconsin for the day. I went for a long hike in the woods and then to a baseball game in Milwaukee. Wisconsin is famous for making cheese. On the way to Milwaukee, there's a big store called Mars Cheese Castle. They sell cheese curds, which is like the cheese before it's been processed. You have to eat it fresh, but it's really good. If you ever go to Wisconsin on I-94, you can stop at Mars Cheese Castle. It's on the way to Milwaukee, just between Chicago and Milwaukee. And now it's time for the quote of the week. This is purely for fun. It's from Al Capone, a famous gangster. He said, "You'll get more with a kind word and a gun than with a kind word alone." Don't read anything into this one. I just thought it was funny. There are so many quotes about how words are more powerful than violence, but Al Capone, one of America's famous gangsters, was at least honest when he said, "You'll get more with a kind word and a gun than with a kind word alone." How philosophical. Well, coming up on Thursday, he had a gun, but no kind words. I'm talking about Belgium's Jurgen Konings. He was a highly trained sniper in the Belgian army. And then he stole a bunch of weapons and threatened to kill his country's leading virologist. It led to a nationwide manhunt. If you live in the region, you probably know what happened next. Don't spoil it for everyone else. The full story will be revealed on Thursday. Well, that's all for today, though. Monday, August 2nd, 2021. Remember, today's lesson was number 386, which means you can find the full lesson resources online at plainenglish.com/386. See you on Thursday.